I'm actually going to start with two personal stories of mine. And the first story actually begins with my childhood, and it'll take you back to where I grew up. I was born in Brooklyn. I moved to Jersey, and then because I'm half Palestinian and half Filipino, I moved to Jordan. Right there. I lived in the capital Amman. My aunt, a wonderful, wonderful woman, she worked as a freelance consultant. She worked in the area of human rights, women's rights, and refugee rights. I honestly had no idea what that meant. All I knew was that she helped people, and so for me, an 8-year-old, that was a cool enough reason to just be dragged all over the country. One day, she decided she would take me to a refugee camp. And if you know anything about Jordan, you know that Jordan has one of the largest populations of Palestinian refugees. And honestly, I didn't know what it was to be a refugee either. I was just told that there are people who weren't in their homes anymore. That was sad for me. And when we were walking down there, we walked down a couple of shady-looking alleyways, and we ended up in a courtyard. And my aunt took me over to the corner. She let me sit down with the other children there, and she said, you know, just stay here while I go set up for my workshop right now. And to keep me busy, she put, for me and the other children, a couple poster papers, and then a big box of Crayola markers. So naturally, instinctively, I jumped. I wanted all the pretty colors. I wanted red, I wanted pink, and I wanted green. And as I grabbed those markers, I stopped, because I realized I was the only one that jumped to get all the pretty markers. It was then that I realized that these children really didn't have much, but they were humble. They were humble with whatever they did have, and that was my first lesson in humility. I honestly thought that I had it bad, because when we were growing up in Jordan, we didn't have the luxury of showers here in America. We had a whole process. My mom used to have to warm up water on the stove, and then in the bathroom we had a little pail over here, we had the hose over here with the cold water, and we had the cup, and we had to do a little, you know, a little of the cold water, a little of the hot water, and then we would just splash ourselves with a cup. So I honestly thought that that was terrible. When I moved here to America, I was like, oh my gosh, you have hot water, and it just comes out of the shower head. So now I always go back and I think of those children in the refugee camps, and I know now that that's the reason why I study international relations, because of those kids. So now I'm going to tell you the other story. The other story will take you a little bit west. When I was 16, I decided I wanted to go to Africa. I was so set on it. I was fascinated by the different cultures, the people there, the languages that they spoke there, and I knew that somehow I was going to get there. So I did my homework. I found a small organization in Global Roots that sponsored trips for high school students to go do service abroad. So, I went to Ghana. And my primary project in Ghana was to help construct a kindergarten classroom there. Secondary was to teach English to elementary school children. And while I was in Ghana, I actually fell in love. I fell in love with this amazing boy named Kofi. He's a cute 5-year-old, but he's grown up now. Kofi amazed me. He had the most amazing smile, the most beautiful eyelashes, and every day, with his friends, he would walk to school, pass by the construction site, say good morning, wave, make a couple funny faces and dance. And then on the way back, he would do the same thing, except he would stop and he would talk. And he was incredible. That's Kofi. Then there was Kobano. Kobano was another really adorable kid that I met there, but he was deaf. And it was very difficult because a lot of the other kids used to make fun of him. I know it's one of those things like 5-year-olds, they point and laugh, and it's unbelievable, but it happens. But even worse, they used to throw rocks at him too, and that absolutely broke my heart. I used to get upset. But Kofi, the boy with the amazing smile and eyelashes. He was the only kid out of the group that used to walk up to Kobana and put his arm around his shoulder and just smile. And so it was then that I learned about kindness. So with that, it brings me to the question, what is my green? When Cassie first asked me, I thought, oh my gosh, what gets me up in the morning? Other than, maybe some tea or my alarm. Well, I really thought about it, and I asked myself, what's my motivation? What's my inspiration? What's my drive? What's my thing? People have things. Some people draw, some people dance, some people sing, some people write, some people go into the area of public policy. What was my thing? Thought about it. This is what I do. Travel. Travel. What is travel? Travel is getting from point A to point B. It's about relocating. It's a journey. That's what you'd like to call it. But travel is more than that. It's about exposure. It's about exposure to different cultures, different peoples, different ideas, different ways of thinking, different clothes, different food. It's so much more than just relocating. And it's about vulnerability. Because when you walk, when you go from point A to point B, you have an idea of what's going to happen, but you never quite know. There's always the unexpected, and so you leave yourself vulnerable. But with that vulnerability, you learn and you grow. And the more you expose yourself, the more you make yourself vulnerable, the more you will grow. And then I stopped. And this is where redefining green comes in. I thought that travel, that was it, that was my green. But then I realized it was more than just travel. It wasn't the traveling itself, it was something else that was my green. People. People are incredible. You don't have to go across the Atlantic to Ghana to know that. Or I didn't have to go to the Philippines to visit my family, or to Jordan, or to Egypt, or to Canada. I didn't have to study abroad this past summer in Morocco. All of those opportunities have helped me to grow as a person. But all I have to do, all anyone has to do, is just go out the front door and look around, because there are so many incredible people in this world. Just a couple days ago, I went to one of my frequent stops, which is Kate and Abby's down in South Orange, in the village. And in one day, I had 3 amazing conversations with 3 complete strangers. One stranger convinced me to pick up my running shoes and to get back on. He inspired me. Another, we talked for about, half an hour about what the Middle East was. And just looking around here today, there's so many incredible people, and you can learn from everyone. I see so many incredible conversations that are waiting to happen, and I know they will. So green is other people. That's what I have to say. It sounds a little familiar. It should. I actually sort of stole the wording from someone. The 20th century existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, or Sartre, however you'd like to pronounce it, in his play entitled No Exit, the bumper sticker was, "Hell is other people." So I sort of took it, flipped it on its head, and came up with this. And just as a disclaimer, I'm in no way offering an antithesis to his philosophy. I just really like the wording. It was catchy. So, green is other people. Just realize that everything that anyone does affects you, and it can affect you for the better. And you should let it affect you for the better. You can just as easily allow it to affect you for the negative, but that's not really productive, is it? You have the choice. So with that, I offer a challenge to everyone here today who's listening. I challenge you to be more aware, and I challenge you to be more conscious and to be inspired. It seems like it's such an easy thing to do, but when you set out to do it, you'll realize just how difficult it is. But with an open mind, you can do it. And because I know that Cool Creek and the young kids in the refugee camp have inspired me to be who I am today. And for that, I thank them. And I thank you all for listening.